Hi, and welcome to Module 3. It looks like we have a lot going on this week, but if we break it down, it really is just bits and pieces that'll help you in all different aspects. So, we've got the reference information. Module 3, there is a nice human IK setup, and then on posing your characters. So there are 2 videos there that you can take a look at. We have a discussion on editing and how we pay attention to timing, ease in, and interpolation. So check out Lifted. It's a pretty common one. You may have already seen it before, but it's fun to watch thinking about these specific things. Don't forget your first post due by Thursday at midnight, then your response post Sunday at midnight. I'm going to skip over 3-2 assignment real quick and go to 3-3. This is basically what you've been doing so far this term. It's just making sure to fix up anything and turn it in again. So complete your manually rigged and skinned armed hand mesh with IKs and controls. It should be fully functioning. So this is your chance. If you struggled with any part, if you didn't get the weighting right, if you couldn't get the controllers, to get that all set. If you've been doing it all along, you're just submitting kind of what you already have. Just go through this checklist and look at everything that I'll be looking for. So your fully functional rig, check your structure, your naming, the controllers, the weighting. Do you have the roll bones? Bone joint numbers are important. It looks like a lot, but again, just make sure, check through it. You should have most of it already. Okay? So you should be completely all set with that, but if there are any questions, feel free. Then we have your 3-2 assignment, which is to create and rig a skeleton. Now, this is using human IK, which kind of sets up the skeleton for you. So basically, you input the number of joints you want it to have, and then it's your job to just move those joints to fit your mesh. Now, if you have a mesh that you've created and you would like to use, that's perfectly fine. Go for it. That's kind of our goal here, but if you need a mesh, I'm just going to put this low poly human base mesh with this announcement so you can feel free to use this. Okay? So you're just going to add human IK. So we need to go down to our rigging drop down, skeleton, all the way down at the bottom, human IK. Create skeleton. Now, you're going to want to kind of make it to be the size of your mesh. So let me go into my channel box here. I'm going to make this transparent so we can see it a little bit more. You can see this is pretty much fitting, but you can always type in sizes to make it bigger or smaller. I'm just going to undo since we were kind of set. There we go. Okay, now pay attention to the assignment guidelines and rubric here. It is important that you get these number of joints set up. This is what makes human IK easier to use. When you're done, you'll see that there will be a green check mark in the upper corner. So again, positioning these, you can use your Move tool, hotkey W, to adjust. Don't forget that when doing this, you'll notice that it affects the entire chain. So if you didn't want to move the children as well, let's say you already rotated this, and of course you'd need to look in different views, but let's say this was set, but you just wanted to move that shoulder joint, you could hold hotkey D if you have a Mac, or Insert if you're on a PC, and then I can move that one joint without affecting the children. I would say get this kind of set up first before you add the additional joints that the assignment is asking for. You're going to add, you're going to add the joints no matter what, but I would recommend kind of getting these positioned first and then adding the extra. Again, it's about starting simply and then adding more detail. So, you know, spine, we'll have 6 here, neck will have 2, so just getting it all situated to how you would like it. And again, just reference this to go through it. Okay? So if there are any questions on this, feel free to ask. I know the video kind of goes over it pretty step by step, so I'm not going to mimic it here. But again, don't hesitate if something's not working. Be happy to go over it with your particular assignment. Then, in a separate file, we have 4 rigs that are already set up with human IK. So you're kind of making the human IK to see how it works, how it functions, how we position it, and then we're going to look at a character that has it. So you can pick any of the 4. I had used Mia a lot, so I'm going to try Gremlin this time. Okay, and you can see we've got human IK over here. Green is always the like good to go. Did I open this? Yeah. Now, when you've got a human IK, we're going to keyframe the following poses along the timeline. Be sure to always use your own body as reference for all the poses. Pay particular attention to balance, center of gravity. Avoid perfect symmetry. So we looked at a lot of these in your anticipation poses with the last discussion board. If we're going to, let's say, lift a foot up, you can't keep your hips exactly straight where they are and pick your foot up. Our body needs to shift weight so that we can balance and stay upward. Think about that back curve line that we were talking about, your line of action. Okay? Kneeling is a little challenging, so give yourself a little bit of time with that, just getting on the ground, making sure the knee is even on the ground. Fighting stance, shocked pose. Make sure to move your time slider first, so let's see. To frame 20, for example, if you're newer to Maya, you can always use this to kind of zoom in on your keyframes. Click in the gray, lighter gray box. Or you can type in here if you know we're dealing with 30 frames. You can type in 30 here. Playing is over here. If you want to do 24 frames per second or 30, I'll leave that up to you. We're not really, it's going to in between for you, but we're not focusing on that. It's just about figuring out the actual positions that you're looking for. So let's say I'm at frame 10. I'm going to make up a pose here, but I typically like to get things kind of situated into a base position before I get started. You'll see you can kind of click. If you want, you can click over here. So if I'm like, oh, I think I want to deal with the shoulder or the wrist. If you want to get to the hand, you can click the arrow here. You can see I'm dealing with the thumb. Okay. Now, when you get everything situated, let's say this is my pose. If you select all and hit S, you can set a keyframe. But notice that when I clicked and dragged, my ear didn't really get selected. Now the ear is just a joint chain. So if you do want a key for that, let's grab one that's moving a little bit. Just make sure you're setting keys for it. Every single controller or section of this control rig is going to have its own set of keyframes. You can always check for this red line. So if you're like, man, I'm not sure if it's on my ankle, it is. You can go into the foot. Is it on the foot? Yes, I have keys. And this is the only keyframe I've set, except for, I guess, my head here. So you can always check with scrubbing. So let's say I'll go to 0 to set up an idle pose. We do something like that. I'll select it all, hit S, and then we can transition to see the difference between the two. I just wanted to show you, depending upon which rig you use, it might look slightly different. For example, this one, we have more controllers set up, so you can deal with it this way. If you are looking in Human IK over here, we are dealing with an IK rig. Remember, the children moving the parent. If you don't want that, you can click this first button. Notice the controllers are gone, and I can't move. That's because I have to rotate to get the arm to move. And you'll also notice when we're in FK, it's these lines between the circles. I would recommend just dealing in IK. Definitely something that you can look at when in FK, but that's how I would go about it. Really, as we've talked about before, get used to pushing things. You know, we talked about briefly dealing with the back here and setting up those lines. You do not want to ruin the mesh or have mesh kind of crush through parts of the mesh, but think about angles and how you want to do it. Now, if I have a character like this, he's going to fall over. So that's where we have to think about weight and how to balance things and where the hips would be, how you'd be transferring your weight and keeping it. Okay? So I would probably download a couple of the 4 and see which one you like working with best. You're going to want to go in your channel box and make a layer for the mesh, just so you can see what you're dealing with a little bit further. If you are watching the videos in the module, sometimes he says things about assignments being due next week or something like that. Make sure just to pay attention to the assignment sheets and this video as to what is due and when. Okay? So, in your rigging, skeleton, Human IK to bring this up. It's going to be, toggled between your windows. You can always hit Control A to go through these windows, or you can just click on it, whatever is easier for you. Get used to rotating things. Get used to doing the finger joints. Nothing's going to sell kind of an idle, not sell an idle pose if you've got straight fingers and the rest of the body is relaxed. Make sure you're touching every controller and handle. Just give it a little bit of movement. Know that, okay, I've dealt with that one, dealt with this one, dealt with that, just to make sure none of the body is falling flat. A lot of times, and you'll see as we move forward, maybe we're dealing with a walk cycle. And, walk cycles are heavily arms and legs and getting those key positions down. And people will be so focused on that and getting the foot roll and all that, that they forget about the back and the body and how we want that to move and feel with the steps as well. Okay? So, dive in. Let me know if you have any questions.